This is Frank Essom, Chairman and CEO of FI Investment Group and your host of Washington Current Review, where we interview leading voices from business and politics and explore the topics of current interest that impact you, the viewer. Today, our guest is Martin Baily, Senior Fellow at the Brookings Institute and former Chairman of Council of Economic Advisors under the Clinton administration. He will be discussing the current issue related to economy, which is a pretty hot topic these days. Thank you very much for coming, Martin.
You're
I appreciate
very welcome.
it very much.
Nice to be here.
How do you see the American economy? Is it poised for recovery, or will there be a more prolonged recession?
Well, it's very hard to predict this economy right now, and economists like me have not done a great job. But I would say the things are getting better. In the fourth quarter of last year, we saw the economy falling very rapidly. The first quarter, again, another rapid decline. In the quarter just past, the second quarter, things are beginning to slow down. Probably will be a -1, -2 kind of GDP growth rate. So the economy is still declining. The key question now is what happens the rest of this year and what happens into 2010, 2011. A lot of the forecasters are saying we're going to bounce back, that when you get a sort of deep recession like this, it's like stretching a rubber band. It bounces back very hard. If it's a deep recession, it comes back. And that's because you get an inventory cycle, and if the housing market begins to turn, then you can generate some rapid growth. But I think many of us, and including me, feel that this is going to be a hard recession to pull out of, because where is the source of growth going to come from? Previously, it has always been the American consumer, which has been the main source of growth, not only for the U.S., but for much of the world. And American consumers have taken a few body blows. Their wealth has gone down, their job prospects, their income, hours of work, unemployment, all of those things have been hitting households. And so consumption is certainly, taken a hit and may not come back as quickly as some people hope. So I think what we're going to get is a flattening out of the economy. So it doesn't feel so bad when you're not falling. It's better than going down, but probably some fairly modest growth. And the other thing that's a concern is that the labor market, even the more optimistic of the forecasters see unemployment staying over 9%, even until 2011. So that's
2011.
Yeah. So even that's going to put a damper on the economy. It's hard to get back all of those jobs that we've lost.
That's not a good news, Martin. Do you see any danger of deflations?
I think probably the bigger concern is deflation rather than inflation, but it depends on the time horizon that you look at. The deflation would come if we get continued weakness of this economy. Typically, we see downward pressure on prices when there's a lot of slack capacity. We are seeing some downward pressure on wages, so that incomes are not growing the way they traditionally do. And so that's in the deflationary direction. Now, we have seen deflation as a problem. It was a problem in Japan. China has had some deflation, although it didn't seem to hurt their growth rate that much. I'm not so concerned about deflation for the U.S. economy. I doubt that we will actually get deflation that's a problem. Now, it's important to separate sort of deflation in the sense of, the general consumer inflation declining from asset price deflation. We have certainly had asset price deflation, as you know.
Right.
And the stock market and housing prices and many other assets have actually gone down. So that kind of deflation is very painful and may continue a little longer, although hopefully that is more close to being at an end. So what about inflation? Well, no immediate danger, but the Federal Reserve has put out, it's kept interest rates very low. It looks like it will continue to keep interest rates very low. And it has done these quantitative easing methods. So there is a lot of money out there. So the question is, could that potentially, as the economy starts to turn around, could that turn into inflation? particularly if you saw oil prices or commodity prices start to move up as well. So I think that's something the Fed is worried about, and they are already thinking about how they're going to pull back some of these facilities that they have created that have expanded their own balance sheet and expanded the money supply so rapidly, so that they're going to have to wind that back as the economy recovers. So I think it's a matter of, do we have confidence that the Fed can do this and we can get a recovery without getting an inflationary recovery?
Correct. Well, let's shift our gear to the Treasury's stress testing.
Yes.
The Treasury just announced that the large banks are all sound with the addition of some extra capital, infusion of some capital. Does this mean the financial crisis is over? Not that I hear from you.
No, I don't think the financial crisis is over. Well, again, in these uncertain times it's hard, and it could be, and I hope it is, but I think the Treasury and the Fed should be keeping a pretty close eye on the situation and making sure that they have contingency plans in case we get another stumble in financial markets. In the stress tests that they ran, and I think they were by and large good stress tests.
Yeah.
I think they were informative.
Right.
They had to make certain assumptions about what was going to happen to the economy. Probably the economy, I think, has done a little worse than they anticipated in that stress test. But more important was what they then assume about what happens to bank losses going forward. The big story obviously was the mortgage crisis and the subprime and all the losses that imposed on banks and financial institutions both in the United States and around the world. And that now we, to some extent, have a handle on. But the trouble is when you get into a recession, you get additional asset losses. So that even though we've coped with the stuff that came out of the initial crisis, we now have concerns about credit cards, about mortgage foreclosures that are caused by the recession, not particularly by bad mortgages, but because people have lost their jobs or whatever. And then finally in the commercial loan and commercial mortgage market. And I think that's the one that I hear the most concern about, that when they ran the stress tests, they put in some assumptions about how heavy the losses were going to be in the commercial area. And they may turn out to be a good bit
a significant
worse.
loss?
The losses may be greater than were anticipated. And if so, then I think the banks may end up needing more capital. Now, Tim Geithner, I think, understands this, and he says, look, if at the moment we've got extra money that we could put into the banks, and if we needed more, we can go to Congress and get more money.
And we can deploy more cash.
And deploy more cash. But, it's important that we have that contingency plan, because that was the trouble when this crisis started. We didn't have a plan, and it seemed like, even though I think Henry Paulson's a very able person, Tim Geithner was at the Fed, but it just felt like we were floundering in the early stages.
It's a true statement. And if you talk to people in the Obama administration, the first thing out of their mouth will be that we inherited this mess from the Bush administrations, and which you talk about Henry Paulson, who's Secretary of Treasury. How do you assess the Obama administration's handling of economic crisis right now?
I think they've done the right things in moving aggressively to deal with the banks and in creating a stimulus package. The complaint I would have about the stimulus package was that it's rolled out rather slowly, so that only a small fraction of the spending has taken place already. And so, people are saying, well, where are the jobs that were supposed to be created by this stimulus package?
And meanwhile, we lost the job.
Well, yes, but a business cycle has its own dynamics. All you can do is to add a stimulus and hope that it offsets some of the impact of the recession. But it's rolling out rather slowly, and some of the spending won't get made until the second half of this year or even 2010. I would have liked to have seen a stimulus package that occurred more quickly. But basically, they have done the right things, which is aggressively on the monetary side, of course, Bernanke, and then creating a sizable stimulus package. One of the things that they have been concerned about is their relationship with Congress and the Democrats in Congress. So they sort of said, we want to do a stimulus package, but they've sort of delegated to Congress what it would actually be. And so it turned into this sort of long list of projects, some of which are better than others, some of which happened.
Pork barrels.
Well, one person's good project is another person's pork barrel. Which, yes, inevitably there's going to be some pork barrel when you spend a lot of money quickly.